every single healer to 3k, then top 1%, all while playing completely alone. My name is BowserTheHealer, and yes, I'm trying to pug every single healer into that top 1% category. This is the hero update, so I have 2 characters at 3k, and then the rest of them are somewhere between 3k and 2,500. The goal is to get everyone to 3k and then eventually push to top 1%. I'm gonna worry about crossing that bridge once I get everyone to 3k. Figured this was the right time to make a video. You learn a lot about Mythic Plus by playing it and pugging it, but I've learned even more by trying to play every single spec so competitively. You get to see different sides of the game, different characteristics of different healers, and the way that people treat you. But I was going to make this video more focused on the specs, and I will talk about each healing spec as a whole, but I've learned a lot about the way players play and the skill level of people in World of Warcraft. So I wanted to dive into that stuff a little bit more today. And when I hit the 3k milestone, I'll likely talk more about my experiences with each individual healer, but I will give you an update on them all today. If you like healing content, get subscribed, and of course, if you just like listen to me talk about World of Warcraft, it'd mean a lot to me. And let's dive into it. Okay, so the biggest thing that I learned from my pugging experience is player skill. It's usually better at the start of a season, and then it gets worse. I only noticed this because I was trying to figure out to myself why my monk got 3k so easily. My monk felt like it was the healer that did the easiest. It was the smoothest, and why was it so smooth? But going back and checking like VODs, no, actually a lot of my healers did well early, even my holy paladin, who I'm the least confident on. And I think it's because the player quality drops. And here's what I think is happening. You get a lot of mythic and heroic raiders, people trying to gear or just do Mythic Plus early on because it's their favorite thing. Start of the season's exciting, you get the most amount of players, makes sense. Find lots of high quality players who picked me up, right? I got a 3k score from last season. You know, players are going to be like, oh, they're good, they were a good healer in season 2. And then you get these like rock star groups, and I think my worst group was still a very fun, very friendly group that did good for a first week of keys. Second week felt the same, and third week honestly also felt the same. But there hit a point, maybe week 4, maybe week 5, that it just fell apart, where I started getting bad group after bad group, and it didn't matter what healer I was on. Resto Druid is actually a healer that you'll hear me talk about later, where I felt like keys are always so buttery on Resto Druid because I feel like I always have the right tools and I know how to handle them, and I'm often not losing runs due to healing throughput. Usually it's other players making pretty massive mistakes. So even Resto Druid went from very peaceful, chill runs where I felt like I was playing really well to runs where the players were making enough mistakes that my Resto Druid was struggling. And I would like get this imposter syndrome, which is the worst, by the way. The imposter syndrome this creates is actually hell on earth. I would run more keys as Resto Druid, and then I would get some okay to good groups and they would be smooth. And you'd realize like, oh, it's the quality of player. That's the problem here. I think people get gear, they get into higher keys, maybe don't run as many keys, but they're able to outgear the content. And then they somehow just inch into a 20, 22, a 24, and they have no idea what they're doing. They haven't run the keys yet. They haven't done the research. And I don't know why this is, but there's some players that feel, and I hate how elitist this sounds, but extremely carried at this level of play. Again, it produces an imposter syndrome feeling, because even now, if I get on my monk and I run like a 20 for the week, I've had some really rough monk keys, but they've always been later in the season. They haven't been the ones that I was doing earlier when I was grinding score. An interesting find, but it's something that I want every healer to hear, because I feel like it's so important as a player to remember that being able to read details in logs and understand why things happened will keep you sane when parties fall apart and you think maybe I'm just not doing good enough. It might be. It might also be that your teammates aren't doing good. So always check yourself, but try not to always blame yourself, because it can turn into a very toxic feedback loop inside your head. Also, small complaint, but this is like the season where I've gotten the worst DPS I've ever played with, and it's always 1. And it's always like 2 DPS, cranking, putting out insane numbers, playing out of their minds. The tank, doing great tank damage, playing out of their mind. Me, doing a ton of damage, really proud of my play. And then 1 DPS, like on par with the tank, 485 item level, not doing anything. And I just have no idea why this is happening. I feel like in season 2, I rarely had this happen, or I feel like I get a key once a day where I feel like a DPS is lagging behind, and you check their gear and it looks fine. And it's never a particular spec either. I've had BM hunters not pull their weight while the survival hunter just tops the charts. And I'm just like, what is going on? What is happening? And I don't have the DPS knowledge to figure that one out, but it's been really weird how often that's been happening to me. And speaking of DPS issues, augmentation. So originally I was running into an issue where runs felt longer because I had an augmentation in my party. Specifically, I was in an Everbloom where I thought it was Tyrannical week because the boss was taking so long, and I looked over and I saw Fortified and I was like, what is going on? The Ebonite uptime was good, but everything else was off. I wanted to get more data, especially after my friend Drellith talked to me about it, and they were saying they were having the same issues. I got this idea on maybe week 6 or week 7, I can't remember. Let's go get some research, get some augs in my run so I can really see what they're doing wrong. Cross compare them with my runs, because I know what I'm doing on augmentation, but I didn't find anyone. I found more devastation evokers in that time period than I found augs. And of course, the one aug that I found was this grandmaster of an aug, just knew what to do, knew how to window things, and played perfectly, and made my life so easy. And I was so angry because I'm trying so hard to find like another example of a bad aug. Did somebody say something about the augs? Did somebody like slander augs on Twitter? I need to know what happened, because now they're all missing. They're even missing in my like 24s. Where did they all go? I do have something very positive to share though. I end up playing with a lot of Spanish speaking players, and they're great. They're some of my favorite people to play with, but sometimes they don't know English. And I know like a smattering of Japanese and English, and that's about it. My Spanish is garbage, but the ping system has done wonders for me. Everbloom, last boss, Tyrannical. I got a hunter who's just standing out of range, and I know they don't speak English because we've already had some communication flubs, and I ping them with a warning, and then I rescue them in front of me, and then I put an arrow on me, and as they're running away from me again, they double back and start jumping in front of me. It was just this moment of like, they get it. They absolutely get it. And every time there was a damage phase, I'd ping an arrow on me when the overlap's happening on the last boss, and they moved. And it was just so lovely. And that's been my experience for most of this season. The ping system has helped me mark afflicted or incorporeal, helped me with roaming packs and telling people that we're about to have a problem. And even when we're talking about people who do know the same language as me, the communication's been excellent. This season, I feel like 90% of my runs have been non-toxic, where it's like kind of neutral, or people have been friendly and talking. Only 10% of those runs have been toxic, and it's usually 1, maybe 2 people at most being toxic. I don't run into a lot of problem groups. Groups that are bad, I run into plenty of those. Groups that are toxic, no. The communication's been stellar this season. Last season, there were less players, obviously, but I had more issues communicating with people. I felt like people weren't as talkative. And again, I really don't know what happened, but it's been easier to explain mechanics to people, to tell them what I want and what we're going to be doing and how I'm going to be doing it. And even on preservation, explaining to people where I want them to position, and people have been listening to the feedback, and I'm so over the moon about that. That just makes me so happy. Communication has been better for me. World of Warcraft as a whole, I kept hearing about how toxic you all were back when I played Shadowlands. And you've only improved since I joined Shadowlands. The toxicity has just gone down and down and down, and the communication and the friendliness has gone up. So I think that's just a boon for us. The only thing I want to see changed from Blizzard is actually their UI. I want more information on enemy nameplates so that we know who's being cast on. There's been a lot of times I try to communicate with someone. If you see that you're being casted on 3 or 4 times, you need to use your CC, and they tell me they don't know when they're being cast on. That means they're not running Plater. That means they're not running a Weakor that tells them when they're getting attacked. And I think we might want to change something about our UI so that that information becomes a bit more relevant, because right now it's a little tough to be stopping and kicking moves based on who's going to get hurt if people don't actually know who's going to get hurt. And so instead of that being an add-on thing, I'd love for that to be a base game feature. Okay, on to the healers. Starting with Mistweaver. Mistweaver got 3k first. It was definitely the easiest, but in more recent keys where things have been harder, I'll be the first to tell you it's the external game that I missed from other healers. Mistweaver covers all of its problems in throughput, right? All players are taking damage. Okay, we'll just out heal the damage. And it's shocking how often you can get away with that. But Chi Cocoon from your Celestial and Life Cocoon, your 1 minute and usually 15-second gigantic bubble you put on someone, that's it. That's all you get. 2 health bubbles. You don't get DR on any of those. And while they're low cooldowns and they're very easy to work into your rotation and have them up whenever you need them, I miss Pain Sub. I miss Aura Mastery. I miss putting defensives on people, or like Spirit Link Totem, and suddenly we're all sharing a health bar. Mistweaver is really good, and it's the healer I probably put the most amount of time into. I didn't realize what I was missing until I took all these other healers so seriously, and then would go back to play Mistweaver only to be like, Man, if only I had a pain suppression, this would be a lot easier. So I really like where Mistweaver's at. I'm happy everyone's playing it, but I definitely know what I'm missing on other healers now when I play Mistweaver. But I guess it makes me appreciate all the work I've put into Mistweaver to make it work, regardless of not having those things. It's wonderful. I'm happy it's doing well, and I've been enjoying it a lot. Interesting for me to look at it in such a different light this time around, because this is not how I viewed Mistweaver a year ago. Preservation Evoker is tough. Now, when I'm playing the spec, I'm on fire. I'm hitting everything perfectly. I'm sweating. I'm busting my buns to make sure that this run gets cleared. And I feel powerful when I do so. I feel like Preservation's always got the right tools. And as long as you position well and you play the mechanics well and everyone else does a good enough job, you feel unbeatable. Until one person doesn't position well and then you're crying in the club. However, the difficulty of this spec to always stay on point and always be this sharp and adapt and all of that, I want to make it sound like a flex, but honestly, I go to Discipline Priest, one of the hardest healers in the game, right? And I'm like, oh, it's this much easier? Yeah, I think I owe everyone an apology if I made them think Preservation was easy. I know I make it look easy. People have said I make it look easy. I'm going to be a little bit nicer in my guides about letting people know that this is a very challenging spec with some very unique challenges, because I don't think I comprehend that until I'm playing Resto Druid and I'm just at my happiest, my most relaxed healing a key, and I go, oh, so I wouldn't change a thing about Preservation. All the buffs I'd want to give it are very small. I don't even think many of you could guess it, but I'm happy with it. But damn, it's really hard. Speaking of Resto Druid, yeah, I said it earlier, butter. Just smooth, breezy to heal with. I feel like I always got the right tools. And it's a mix of both its mastery and how you kind of like, I want to say hammer on like Guitar Hero. Like you already got a heal running, and you just press a few more fingers down and that player's getting a little more healing, and that's all you needed. You can move on to your next task. I love also whenever you get healing that isn't you. Prayer of Mending on Holy Priest is similar to this, and so is Time of Need, the talent on Preservation Evoker. But having the little Grove Guardian homies come in and just start slamming people with heals is incredible, because it just takes the work off your shoulders. So you can go do damage, you can go do more healing, you can set up some crowd control while you're waiting for everyone to get topped off and to go into like say another healing phase or damage phase. I love it. Resto Druid is quite peaceful. The funniest thing is that I think the most toxic players I've ever had to deal with though were on my Resto Druid. And I think that's just bad luck, but it's a very funny observation, as for the most part, my character looks so laid back. I'm always a little shocked that I'm interfacing with such toxic players. And it's not like this happens on my Holy Priest. No, it happens on my Disc and my Resto Druid. So I don't know what I did to deserve it, but I really like Resto Druid, and it very much has snuck up as my fourth favorite healer, but it's very close to Mistweaver and Discipline Priest. Very, very close. And speaking of Resto Shaman, this and Holy Priest are my sleeper hitters, and that I really didn't think I was going to like them, and I love them. Resto Shaman is so basic, it's so simple, it's so fundamental, and yet when you play all those pieces correctly, you still feel like a genius. The healing throughput's good, the damage is fantastic, and when there's a healing mechanic coming up and you know how to use the cooldown and use your totems correctly and get the heals out that you need, it's a great feeling. But God, it's the crowd control. It is that very low cooldown crowd control. Capacitor totem's low cooldown. The slow field is low cooldown. Thunderstorm, I think it's called, where you knock everything up or back depending on how you talent it. That's such a low cooldown. I want to say it's like 24 to 30 seconds. It's something insane. You always have something online, and with a ranged 12-second kick, it doesn't get better. It really doesn't get better. A lot of runs fall apart either due to lack of throughput, lack of external defensives, or a lack of crowd control. And it's nice to be able to have a spec that just so easily controls so much of the field. I'm used to it with Mistweaver, but Resto Shaman has just a few more tricks up their sleeves, and it's been super fun learning this spec. So Resto Shaman players, all of you who came through and helped me out, thank you. And Holy Priest is a similar vibe. I really didn't like Holy Priest in Shadowlands, especially when they turned into like a spaceship. Do you remember the Kyrian thing? Yeah, they floated like they were, I don't know, spaceship, alien, something, blasting circle, whatever. I'm really happy we're past that era, because I love the damage, I love the throughput, but the single target focus to the healing combined with Prayer of Mending is a combo that just feels right. It feels like as long as you're smart and you heal the people you know you need to heal, and do it at the right cadence and rhythm to restore mana, use cooldowns, and buy yourself time to do damage, damage, you get that flow correct on Holy Priest, and you feel fast, you feel smart, and you feel powerful. Symbol of Hope's a good cooldown. If you notice your players actually press defensives, being able to reduce their defensives cooldown is really, really cool. Seeing that, watching those defensives become more available is a great feeling. But then furthermore, my favorite button, Guardian Spirit. Guardian Spirit is just chef's kiss for a pug player. You give them a heal amp, and if they die with the heal amp up, they don't die. The move goes on a 3-minute cooldown if you save someone's life, and it's a 1-minute cooldown if you don't save their life. That's really powerful. And if you've ever been on the fence about playing Holy Priest, it's more interesting than it was in Shadowlands, in my opinion, and it's in a good spot, so give it a try. Now, for the other priest spec, Discipline Priest, and just for clarity, I don't plan on getting these both separately to 3K. I realize that might be a little too much time commitment, so I'm going to mostly focus on Disc, but I have the Holy whenever I need it, and I've been enjoying Holy, so I'll probably definitely run some higher keys on my Holy Priest. But Discipline is tough in that it's hard to play, and it lacks throughput. In a bursty situation, it has enough throughput to handle a mechanic, but when players make mistakes left and right, it just feels like everything falls apart. I've actually gotten to the point where I feel like my Holy Paladin, my weakest healer, I feel like I can hold together those dangerous moments better, and more on that when I talk about Holy Paladin. Discipline, like, you hand out some pain subs, you try to get people inside of your barrier so that they like live, and then they don't stand in the barrier, or they continue to take damage and nobody's using their kicks or their crowd controls, and you actually only have Psychic Scream. And because I'm a panda, I get Quaking Palm, but that's one AoE stop and one single target stop on a 2-minute cooldown. It does not feel great. Disc is like, it's conflicting because it really does just fall apart when things aren't good, when players are taking too much damage and making too many mistakes. But if you get even a remotely competent group, one that knows how to hit defensives, a self-heal here and there, and like stop mobs from casting, you feel on top of the world, and it's very powerful. And the flow of the spec, watching all the health bars go up as you destroy some enemy with like a dark reprimand, is what I live for. That moment is so powerful. And while PI feels good on a Holy Priest, PI feels even better on Disc, and I don't really know why. I think it's just because the traditionally slower moves like Radiance move quicker, giving everyone Atonement if you're manually ramping is significantly faster. Something about PI on Disc feels unstoppable, and I love that. So overall, I'm really liking Disc where it's at, but it's maybe one of the biggest heartbreakers of all the healers right now, just in terms of the amount of times my runs have fallen apart, and there was nothing a Discipline Priest could ever do to save it, but I know my Mistweaver might have been able to save it. That's a hard one to hold on to. In Holy Paladin, this is the one I'm the most worried about. It's my lowest score healer in the 2500 range, and it's not that I don't like Holy Paladin. I actually like it a lot more now than I ever have. I do miss Necrotic Hammers from Shadowlands, but I'll live, I'll make it. But it's the lack of throughput without cooldowns. How have I solved this problem? Well, it's by not listening to anyone. A lot of people told me to run Avenging Wrath, and the Avenging Crusader was worthless, but between Avenging Crusader and Daybreak/Divine Toll, I'm able to cover mistakes. Some mistakes are better handled with Avenging Crusader, and thus I can hold Daybreak for a mechanic, or I can use Daybreak to deal with an emergency, and I can use Avenging Crusader to cover something in a pinch. That's actually worked really well for me. I don't know if people just haven't tried it, or if they just don't know how to fist weave. They've never played Mistweaver Monk in their life, but it actually feels quite good, and I'm actually really proud of my progress. The damage isn't enough. They gave us a damage buff on Tuesday, and it's just, if you're watching this video when it comes out, it's just not enough. They need a little more single target, definitely need some more AoE. I think even more importantly, just buff Word of Glory. I don't know what any other Holy Paladin wants, but for me, I just want that Word of Glory to feel better, because that would fix most of my issues. The coolest thing that I discovered about Holy Paladin is that, and as far as my testing goes, this seems to be true, if I hit Beacon of Virtue, and then I use Daybreak to suck up all the glimmers, which I hate that sentence, all of that healing is shared through Beacon of Virtue. It's really powerful. I have used that to emergency clutch heal people, and then you have access to your machine gun, dare I say Halo 3 battle rifle level Holy Shocks. You can just slam the whole party's health bar back up. It's awesome. I'm actually really happy with Holy Paladin as a feel, but I'm really sick of Glimmer, and I'm really sick of this lack of throughput that I really hope can get fixed. It doesn't feel right that it does less damage than other healers because it's a do damage to get resources. And what does that resource do for you? Almost no healing. And that feels pretty bad. So I'm leaving this one last so that I can give it all of the research time, all of the focus, and when it's time for me to rush Holy Paladin, not Holy Priest, Holy Paladin to 3k, that I can give them my full undivided attention and really push myself, because I've gotten better, but I know I can get even better. So I want to give myself that chance. But that's going to do it. That's the healer roundup. That's what I got to say. Thank you all so much for listening all the way to this point, and I'll see you at the 3k update. Take care, everyone.